Hilchos Bikkurim u'shar matnas kahuna shebagvulin perek shnei masar. The laws of the first fruits and other kohanic gifts, chapter 12. Today is the final chapter of these laws that deal with the special gifts that go to the Kohanim. Yesterday we learned the laws of redeeming the firstborn son. Today we're going to learn the laws related to another very similar mitzvah, also has to do with redemption, and a very rare mitzvah, especially nowadays. And that's called Pidyon Peter Chamor. Pidyon Peter Chamor means the redemption of the firstborn donkey. It's a very obscure and lesser known mitzvah, where when a Jew owns a donkey, and the donkey has a firstborn child, a firstborn male, that male donkey belongs to the Kohanim. Like the firstborn son, God attaches holiness to it and you have to redeem it from the Kohen. So to a firstborn donkey, God attaches a significance to it and it has to be redeemed from a Kohen. The redemption process, though, is a little different than the redemption of a firstborn son. The redemption of a firstborn son, we saw yesterday, is about giving money, 5 silver coins to the Kohen. The redemption of the firstborn donkey is an exchange concept where a person would provide a sheep to the Kohen. You give a sheep to the Kohen, that would be the way you would redeem, you would buy back your firstborn donkey. There's another difference between the two redemptions in that with the firstborn donkey, Torah has a very special additional mitzvah even, to the mitzvah. And that is that if a person did not want to redeem his firstborn donkey for whatever reason, he would have to kill it. Chop off its head. That's the way the Torah describes it. There's many different reasons that are offered for it. We're not going into the theological or philosophical element of the mitzvahs. We're just talking about the legal element here. The legal element is either you buy it back with a sheep or you kill it. That's called arifa. We have pidyon, the redemption, and arifa is the chopping of the head. That's the two parts to the mitzvah we're going to be discussing today. Now, since nowadays it's very rare to have Jewish farmers that own lots of animals, especially donkeys, back then in the agrarian society, donkeys was a very common thing. Everybody needed a donkey to get around. But today, Jews don't own donkeys as much. So when Jews do own donkeys, and they do have a firstborn male child, it becomes a very big deal. And on the screen, we can see here what's a huge ceremony that they made out of it. I think this is in the Catskills somewhere in the summertime. They had a Jew who had a firstborn donkey, and they gave the honor to one of the big rebbes. I forget which one that is on the picture there, but they made a huge deal out of it. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to come see how this mitzvah is done. And there you have the sheep. They're holding the sheep, and there's the donkey, all decorated, the firstborn donkey, and they're exchanging the sheep for the donkey. So it's a mitzvah which applies even nowadays, as the Rambam will immediately say, but very rare. So it's very interesting to be learning about all the details of this mitzvah in today's chapter. Just as a note of transparency, thank God yesterday my son was born. I'm recording this video before Shabbos, so it's still yesterday when my son was born. I'm still wearing the bracelet over here. I didn't have as much time to prepare this chapter as I would have liked to. So if some of the points remain unclear, we can just attribute it to that. And every time we learn Rambam again, we'll be able to have a deeper understanding. It says the Rambam halacha aleph, mitzvah saseh, it's a positive commandment, lifdois kol adam Yisrael, that every Jew should redeem peter chamor b'seh. He should redeem the firstborn donkey with a sheep. If the Jew chooses not to, he didn't want to redeem it, mitzvah saseh la'arfai. There's a mitzvah, there's a special positive mitzvah to chop off its neck, to break its neck. Shenemar, as it says in the verse, which describes this mitzvah, ufeter chamor tifde v'seh v'im lo yisifde va'araftoi. The Rambam quotes it as ufeter. Here it has v'chol peter. The Rambam seems to be combining another verse where the word ufeter is used. I just put up on the screen over here this one from Exodus, from Shmos. V'chol peter chamor tifde v'seh. Every firstborn donkey you should redeem with a sheep. That's the first ideal option. V'im lo yisifde va'araftoi. If you did not redeem it, or if you don't choose to redeem it, then you must chop off its neck. Ushtei mitzvahs elu, says the Rambam, these two mitzvahs, ne'adois b'chol makom u'v'chol zman. They apply in every place and in every time. Even nowadays, as I said before. U'mitzvahs pidiyah kodemes lemitzvahs arifa. Even though it's two equal mitzvahs, they're not equal in precedence. Ideally, the mitzvah of redemption should precede the mitzvah of chopping off the head. In other words, always try to do the redemption before having to resort to fulfill the mitzvah of chopping off its neck. Let's say when it came to Ma'aser Sheni, if you remember earlier in this book with the laws of the second tithe, so you can either bring the produce to Jerusalem or transfer the holiness to money. Over there, the Rebbe explained, based on the Rambam's exact precise language, that there's actually two equal mitzvahs. It's not one's an ideal scenario and one's less ideal. They're both equally ideal. Here, the Rambam clearly says one is more ideal, one is less. It's the mitzvah to redeem the donkey with the sheep takes precedence to the mitzvah of chopping it off. Halacha beis hasesha poidin boy noisne lakoyin. The sheep which is used to redeem the donkey is given to the kohen. It's one of the gifts of the kohen. Shenemar, as it says, kol peter rechem v'goymer. In the list, in Bamidbar, where it lists the gifts to the kohenim, it says kol peter rechem. Every animal, every donkey that opens up the womb, and we'll soon see. It doesn't say the word donkey in here, but if you look at the full verse, it says anyone that opens up the womb, whether it's human or animal. So the firstborn human must be redeemed. And, this is the key words here, you should also redeem the firstborn of the impure animals. Torah is very general. It only says the impure animals. It says the Rambam, continuing halacha gimel, even though some actually read it as one long read, everyone that opens the womb. And the impure animals, firstborn, you shall redeem. We have a tradition received an explanation of this verse that the impure animal being referred to here is only the donkey. Not every impure animal. Not a horse, only a donkey. And the reason why only a donkey is chosen depends on which opinion you follow. According to the Rambam, in his other work called the Meirah HaNevuchim, he writes that it has to do with commemorating the Exodus, where Hashem killed the firstborn, but it only is with donkeys because back then the agrarian society required donkeys. Everyone had to own a donkey, but not necessarily other non-kosher animals. Rashi seems to indicate that it has to do with the Egyptians. Somehow donkeys symbolize the Egyptians. Donkeys assisted the Jewish people when they were leaving Egypt, as we say in the Talmud, that every single Jew walked out with 90 donkeys full of riches. So in some way, donkeys is connected to Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that's the reason why it's only donkeys. But the fact that in tradition, this word, behema hatmeya, only refers to donkeys is a halachic fact. It's only referring to the firstborn donkey. Halacha dalid peter chamor, asur bahanaha ad sheyipadeh. A firstborn donkey is actually forbidden to have benefit from it until you redeem it. You must do the mitzvah, and then only then can you make use of it. If you sold it off before redeeming it, dama vasurin, any money you made from the sale, it's forbidden to have benefit from that money. But if it died before having a chance to redeem it, or you chose to go the other way and you chopped off its neck, yikaver, it needs to be buried. Because it's always forbidden to have benefit from it. Even in the scenario where you chopped off its neck, after killing it, it's forbidden to have benefit from it. Since the bottom line is it wasn't redeemed. Therefore, if you did not redeem it, and you chose to give the donkey, the firstborn donkey, itself to the Kohen, you haven't really achieved anything. It's forbidden for the Kohen to make use of it till he redeems it with a sheep. Now, since it's the Kohen's, he can just take the sheep for himself if he chooses to redeem his own donkey. Or take the route of chopping off its neck, and it'll be buried. The point is, as long as the actual act of redemption has not been done to the firstborn donkey, nobody, even the Kohen, can make use of it. It has to be redeemed. And if it's not redeemed, it has to be buried and not used. Says the Rambam, Kohanim were suspect about this matter, about treating their firstborn donkeys that weren't redeemed in the improper way. Therefore, it became forbidden for Jews to give their firstborn donkeys to a Kohen, unless he watches in front of his eyes as the Kohen redeems the donkey with a sheep. Halacha hey, hifrish pidyon peter chamer. A person puts aside a sheep to redeem a firstborn donkey. Umeis haseh koidem sheyitnenu lakohen. But the sheep died before you had a chance to give it to the Kohen. Einoi chayav b'achra yusay. You're not responsible to replace it. Simply give the carcass of the sheep to the Kohen and let him benefit from it whatever way he wants. Take the wool, take the hide, make use of the meat by selling it to non-Jews. Whatever way, the dead animal as is the Kohen's. If the firstborn donkey died after it was redeemed, you can give the sheep, and you should give the sheep to the Kohen, even though the donkey now died and the sheep is kind of not serving really a purpose. But once it was redeemed, you give the sheep to the Kohen, and it is permitted to have pleasure from the donkey, the dead donkey that is, in whatever way, because it's already been redeemed. And again, once the redemption action was done, that's what kosherizes it for benefit. Halacha vav me'ein masai chayav lifdoisei. At what point does the obligation of redemption begin? In other words, from the day it's born, when is the obligation time frame? It says the Rambam, Misha Yivalid v'ad shleishim yom. The ideal mitzvah, unlike when it came to the firstborn son, where you have to actually wait a month before you can redeem it. Here, the ideal mitzvah only applies within the time frame of the first month, from when it's born till it's 30 days old. After 30 days, if you want to chop off its neck, chop off its neck. If you want to redeem it, redeem it. All that's involved is just a delaying of the mitzvah. In other words, the point is the ideal time frame is in the first 30 days. There's a big question here why the Rambam puts the chopping of the neck first before the redemption. We just said a bunch of times that redemption is the ideal way to do the mitzvah, and only then to chop off its neck. The Rabbi answers this basically in a technicality. He says, there's two ways to understand it. The Rebbe has two answers. Either because the whole idea of chopping off its neck is only introduced as an option after 30 days, the Rambam begins with that, because that is the chidush, that is the novelty that applies after 30 days. Or because we're about to continue learning laws of redemption, the Rambam wanted to make it orderly and symmetrical to read it. So he begins with the chopping of the neck, he moves to the redemption, and immediately goes into all the laws related to redemption, as we see now in Halacha Zayin. If a person chooses not to redeem his firstborn donkey, you must chop it with a butcher's cleaver, this thick knife over here, from its back. Shenemar, because the verse says, we saw it before on the screen right over here. If you don't redeem it, you must chop off its neck. But you cannot kill the donkey, not with a regular wooden stick, nor with a reed, nor with an axe, nor with a saw, it's only the butcher's cleaver. Nor should you starve it. Shouldn't bring it into a room and lock the door until it dies. Torah says clearly, take action and chop off its neck. Halacha ches, ein poidin, we cannot do the redemption. In other words, let's say you're using the redemption option and you're supposed to use a sheep. So the Rambam is going to address whether you can use other things. Ein poidin, we cannot do the redemption, loi be'egel, not with a calf, but loi be'chaya, nor with a undomesticated animal like a deer, but loi be'seh shachut, not with a slaughtered sheep, some steak, but loi be'treifa, nor with an animal which is sick, has been mortally wounded, is going to die in 12 months, but loi be'kilayim, nor with a hybrid, but loi be'koi, nor with an unidentified species. Remember, because the verse says, tifdeh v'seh, you must redeem it with a sheep. Ve'ein karoi seh, ela kvasim ve'izim chayin bilvad. The word seh in the Torah means live sheep or goats. Only live sheep or goats. Halacha tes, ein paidin b'seh hadoime le'acher. You cannot redeem with an animal that's actually a sheep, but it looks like something else. Sometimes let's say a sheep mom would give birth to a baby that doesn't look like a sheep. You can't use it for the mitzvah. If you did after the fact, it's redeemed. You can redeem a firstborn donkey with what's called a ben pakua. Ben pakua is the name for an animal which is discovered alive in the body of its dead mom. An animal was slaughtered, you opened up its belly, and there was a fetus that was alive. It's called a ben pakua. So you have a sheep that was discovered this way. You can redeem a firstborn donkey with that sheep, but not with disqualified sacrifices. You have an animal that was consecrated to be brought as a sacrifice, and then it became blemished, let's say. That's called psulei hamukdashin. It's a disqualified sacrifice. You cannot use that sheep for redemption. Because it says about these disqualified sacrifice, katzvi v'cha'ayal, that they are compared to a deer and a gazelle. Matzvi v'ayal in paidin, by the same way a deer and a gazelle are in the chaya category. Undomesticated animal, and they cannot be used for redemption. Af psulei hamukdashin ein paidin b'hem. So too, disqualified sacrifices cannot be used for redemption of the firstborn donkey. Halacha yud paidin b'seh bein zcharim bein nekebes. Once you're using a sheep, you can use for redemption of a sheep, whether it's a male or a female. Bein tmimim bein malimum, whether they're blemished or they're complete without blemish. Halacha yud paidin b'seh. When you're using a sheep in the proper way to redeem the firstborn donkey, you can redeem with any sheep. Bein zcharim, bein nekeves, whether it's male or female. Bein tmimim, bein balim women, whether it's unblemished or blemished. Bein tanim, bein dilim, whether they're adult or small. Doesn't matter. Halacha yud aleph, sesha lakchem midmei shvi'is. If you bought a sheep with shvi'is, with shmita money. So we're going to learn in the next set of laws the laws of Shemitah, that when you buy produce or something with money of Shemitah, the object becomes holy with Shemitah sanctity. So if you bought this sheep with Shemitah money, ein paidin bayas havada, you cannot redeem a definite firstborn donkey. Avol paidin bayas hasafek, you could redeem a doubtful firstborn donkey. We're going to see at the end of the chapter, like we had yesterday, a whole bunch of scenarios of doubtful firstborns. We're going to have a whole bunch of scenarios of doubtful firstborn donkeys. If it's a doubtful firstborn donkey where you have to redeem it anyway, that Shemitah bought sheep can be used to redeem the doubtful donkey. What if a Jew doesn't have a sheep to redeem the donkey? Is there another way out? Says the Rambam, simply use money, redeem it for its worth, and give the worth to the Kohen. The Torah says clearly use a sheep. So the Rambam explains, Torah didn't say you have to use a sheep to be stringent, that you only can use a sheep. Torah allowed you to use a sheep as a leniency. That means, let's say you had a firstborn donkey worth 10 coins, you can use a sheep even if the sheep is only worth 1 silver coin and get away with saving 9 silver coins. You only spend 1 and getting back 10. Torah is giving you an extra option. But if you don't have that option, then just pay the money. Let the firstborn donkey not be any stricter than actual consecrated property, which can be redeemed with money for its worth. So, firstborn donkey also, if you don't have the sheep, use the money. When do we say this law? That you can either go with a sheep as a leniency or you must give its worth. If the worth of the firstborn donkey is at least 3 zuz, 3 mini silver coins, same as a dinar. Each zuz is like a dinar. But if the worth of the firstborn donkey was less than even 3 zuz, either you use a sheep, leniency option, or you got to give 3 zuz. Can't give less than 3. Unless, as Rambam immediately says, a generous eye gives a selah, which is 4 dinar, 4 zuz. A stingy eye gives half a selah, which is 2, and only the average eye gives 3. So the Rambam seems to be kind of self-contradictory. You can't give less than 3. Then he says if you're stingy, you give 2, less than 3. So I guess the Rambam in the beginning means at least an average eye, but the stingy eye will end up giving even a little bit less. If somebody redeems the firstborn donkey of his friend, even though he shouldn't really, don't make into your friend's business, it's redeemed, and the donkey goes back to its owner. So maybe you can be a nice guy, let's say you know your friend doesn't have a sheep, you step in, you give a sheep to the Kohen. What you did is done, but ideally you should let the guy do his own mitzvah. Kohen's and Levites, they're exempt from the firstborn donkey mitzvah, because it says, Torah juxtaposes the firstborn of the people and firstborn of impure animals, which is the donkey, you should redeem. Any person to whom the laws of firstborn humans applies, they apply to the laws of firstborn animals. Whoever is exempt from the redemption of the firstborn son, like we learned yesterday, Kohen and Levites are exempt, you're also exempt from the firstborn of the impure animals, the donkey. Somebody buys the fetus of a non-Jewish donkey. So there's a donkey which is pregnant, and he's buying the fetus inside it. Or the Jew owns the pregnant donkey, and he's selling off the fetus to a non-Jew. Even though it's not allowed, when the donkey is born, it's exempt from the firstborn redemption. We don't even penalize him for this matter. Point is, there's a Gentile involved in the partnership somewhere, so we don't have to redeem it. If the Gentile was a partner, he only half owned either the mom or the firstborn, even if he only owned 1/1000th of it, it's exempt. As soon as there's a portion belonging to the Gentile, it's exempt. If he only owned 1 limb, like a hand or a foot or the ear, if that limb were to be cut off, it would be considered a halachic blemish. It's exempt from firstborn laws. But if, even upon cutting that portion off, it wouldn't be considered a halachic blemish for the altar, that means that the Jew owns the full part that would go to the altar, and therefore it would be obligated in the redemption. Now, of course, a donkey doesn't ever go onto an altar. It's an impure animal. The point is, if it's equivalent and a kosher animal would be considered unblemished, then with a donkey, it should be redeemed. Same thing if a Jew contracts a donkey from a Gentile. He says, I'll take care of it, and we'll divide the proceeds. We'll divide the baby. Or if a Gentile is contracted by a Jew. In all these cases, it's exempt from the firstborn laws, because it says, This is the verse that I didn't put into my slideshow here. It's the verse in the beginning of the section which deals with firstborn sons in the book of Shmos. Hashem says, sanctify for me every creature that opens the womb, whether it's a person or an animal. But it says it among Israel, Bivnei Yisrael. Ad she'yeh hakol b'Yisrael means it has to be fully owned by the Jew in order to be obligated in the laws of redemption of the firstborn, whether for a son or for an animal, for the donkey. Halacha tazayin gershon izgayer ve'ein yodua im ad shalei nizgayer yol dechamayro achar shenizgayer. You have a convert that converted, and you don't know when his donkey gave birth to its firstborn son. Was it before he converted and he's exempt, or after he converted and he's obligated? He's obligated. He must do the mitzvah of either chopping off the neck or redeeming. Notice that Rambam puts chopping first before redemption. Again, the same question as before. Isn't the ideal way to redeem it? So the Rabbi explains the same principle over here. The Rambam is about to go into the laws of redeeming, so he first puts chopping, get it out of the way, then he goes into all the laws related to redemption. If the convert chooses to redeem it with a sheep, haseshel ger, the sheep remains the convert, because it's the Kohen who wants to extract the sheep, who has to prove that it was actually born after the guy converted. So long as he can't prove it, can't take the sheep from the convert. If a non-Jew puts aside a firstborn donkey, we let him know he's not obligated. It's literally permitted to shear it, to work with it. It has no holiness at all. If a cow gave birth to a shape of a donkey, or a donkey gives birth to a shape of a horse, Potter, it's exempt from the laws of the firstborn, because it says, Ufeter chamoir tifde v'seh, Ufeter chamoir. Twice the same verse. Similar scenarios. Peter chamoir tifde v'seh, Peter chamoir tifde v'seh. It says twice that you have to redeem the firstborn donkey with a sheep. Shtei pa'amim, it says twice. Ad she'yeh hayolet chamoir, which means both the birther and the birthee, the mother and the child, need to have the resemblance of a donkey. If it even has part of the signs of a donkey, it's obligated in the laws related to the firstborn. Halacha yutes. Now we're going to go into the scenarios that we had, like yesterday with the moms and the firstborns. We're also going to have it with donkeys and their firstborns. You have a donkey which never gave birth to children. And it gave birth to two boys. So for sure, one of them is a firstborn. The owner must give a sheep, at least one sheep, to the Kohen. If it gave birth to twins, boy and a girl, you must put aside one sheep to lift the holiness that may be resting upon the boy, had it been born first, and that allows it to have benefit from it. Maybe the male was born first. However, the sheep that's put aside goes to the owner and not to the Kohen. Because again, if you want to extract, you must bring the proof. And the Kohen will have to prove that the boy was born first. Halacha chaf. You have two donkeys, both belonging to one Jew, did not give birth ever. They give birth now to two boys. That means one of them, each one had a boy. You must give two sheep to the Kohen, because they're for sure two firstborns, even if you don't know who the mom is. But if they were to have a male and a female, or two males and a female, you only have to give one sheep to the Kohen, because one of the donkeys for sure had a firstborn son, but the other one may have had the twins that would have had the girl first, or maybe she only had the girl completely. If the two donkeys combined gave birth to two females and a male, or two boys, two girls, the Kohen gets nothing. He doesn't have to put aside one sheep for himself. Because in this scenario there are many doubts. Maybe one of them gave birth to the boy, and it's a firstborn, and the other gave birth to the two females. Or maybe this one gave birth to the girl, and this one gave birth to twins, boy and girl, but the boy was born first. But it could have also been the girl first, and then the boy, in which case there's no firstborn. Same thing in the case of two boys and two girls. Also, all these scenarios. They may both have given birth to twins, boy and girl. Both boys were born first. Both girls may have been born first. Each one gave birth to a boy and a girl. There's 100 different ways to go. Point is, since the scenario where both boys are for sure firstborn is so far-fetched, you don't give anything to the Kohen. Now, all these cases were cases where both donkeys never gave birth to any firstborn donkeys before. But what if you have achas bikra, the achas shaloi bikra? Here we have one of the donkeys already gave birth to another donkey. It's holding another baby in its mind. And now, the oldush neis chadim v'nisarvu, they gave birth to two boys. And the boys got mixed up. The question is, of course there's two boys born, but which one is the firstborn born to this donkey which never gave birth? You must give at least one sheep to the Kohen, because one of them is for sure firstborn. If you give birth to a boy and a girl, here it's 50-50, so you have to put aside a sheep. Don't give it to the Kohen because it's in doubt. And if you want to extract, you must bring the proof, but you must put it aside. Same thing will apply if you bought a donkey from a Gentile, and you don't know if it had a child before or not, and it gives birth to a boy, is it firstborn or not? You must redeem it with a sheep, which belongs to the owner, not to the Kohen, because it's a doubt. A person has 10 sheep. And he also had 10 scenarios of doubtful firstborn donkeys for which he put aside each of these sheep. These 10 sheep are considered totally ordinary because each one its holiness is in doubt whether it's actually holy. And therefore, we'll see in 2 books from now, there's a law that every year you take all your animals that are born that year and you separate every 10th animal as a sacrifice. All these 10 sheep have to go into the pen to be counted towards those 10s because they're all only doubtfully used as redeeming a firstborn, not for sure. You put aside one as the 10th, as the meiser, and the rest will be yours as they were. We'll get into these laws in detail in the laws related to meiser behema. You have a Jew. Basically, this is a scenario that crosses a bunch of generations. So, we're talking about this Jew over here. He's a regular Jew, not a Kohen. He has 10 firstborn donkeys, definite firstborn donkeys in his house that fell to him. They fell to him from the house of his grandfather, who was a Kohen. Now, a Kohen, we saw in the beginning of the chapter, is exempt from the laws of firstborn donkeys. Okay, excuse me, these are the sheep. Donkeys are up here. Okay? And this grandfather Kohen inherited the donkeys from his grandfather who was also a Jew. So you have 2 Yisraels at the bookends. The top great-great-grandpa Yisrael had 10 firstborn donkeys. And he passes it on to his grandson who's the Kohen. Once the Kohen owns it, it should seemingly be exempt. But the Kohen passed it on to his grandson, the regular Jew. The Yisrael must put aside 10 sheep for the 10 donkeys, but they all belong to him. The Chayavin b'Maiser, they're also going to be obligated to be tithed because they're only in doubt. Since they passed through a Kohen's possession, the donkeys may have become not obligated anymore. So you got to put aside the sheep, but keep them for yourself. Treat them like regular animals and tithe them as well. Brich Rachamana Desayan, blessed is the merciful and grants us assistance. Mazal Tov for concluding the laws of Bikkurim and all the other Kohanic gifts.